And we are live. Hey, everybody. John Robinson here. Time for Tuesday Talks. We are live streaming to you guys from, well, I'm in Meridian, Idaho today in my little studio office. And I have heard you guys loud and clear. So many of you have told me, what's with your background? So I'm not smart enough to figure out how to do the virtual background stuff. So I have actually just got this big, just basically a big black cloth behind me. I'm not the most creative guy when it comes to design and colors and all that stuff, but I've got some ideas because so many of you guys have been like, what in the world? You know, you got to do something about your background. So I'm working on that and I want you guys to know. So I'm hearing the sounds of the audience. I'm hearing you guys' feedback. Speaking of feedback, hey guys, if you can hear me right now, let me know. I got Peggy on here. She says, hello. Hey, Peggy in Portland, Oregon area. And then we've got, looks like we've got Andy, local home buyer. Man, you guys have got to check out Andy, his website, localhomebuyer.com. Great little website he's been working on. Go give him some love on there, localhomebuyer.com. If you guys want to work with him, I'm sure he'd be willing to collaborate with you guys on leads, send people to that website. And if a lead pops up from your area. Yeah, Kevin says, what, no more Batcave? So Kevin is one of the voices of, I'm going to call it constructive criticism, trying to help me out. So I am working on some things for my backdrop. I at least blurred the screen a little bit today. But yeah, I'm working on that. Hey, Ted, good to see you, bro. Hope you guys are doing awesome with your business startup out there in the Beaverton Tigard area. I have some stuff I want to go over today, and it's going to be a little bit lengthy, so I want to jump right into it. But if you're just joining us for the first time, if you've never been on here before, and this is your first time joining us for Tuesday Talks, I'd love for you to say hello. So just say hi. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from, which channel, whether it's YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, whatever it is you're watching from. I'd love to know which platform. I think most of our folks these days are coming from YouTube. So let's get right into it, okay? I made a post yesterday and kind of stirred some things up a little bit. And the post was really built around the executive order. Well, really not even built around that. It's really built around the concept or the thoughts or maybe the potential opportunities or the potential loss of opportunities, depending on how you look at it. The subject matter that really started all this was some recent articles, one from the Business Insider, which I actually tried to pull up. And interestingly enough, that Business Insider article that I got the story from really has actually been pulled down. I'm not sure what happened. I'm not sure what was said or what was not said. But interestingly enough, what we have is we have Donald Trump made President Donald Trump, and everybody has to kind of just, let that hit you however it's going to hit you. But President Donald Trump actually made an executive order. He signed it into place, and it looks like there's going to be a real solid concerted effort to get this to shut down large institutional Wall Street fund buyers from purchasing single-family home residential real estate in America. Now, this is pretty much unprecedented. And I actually am a big fan of this executive order. I think this is something that should have been done a while ago. I think it's basically Wall Street run amok. These big hedge fund buyers have been purchasing real estate for a long time all across the U.S. And I mentioned this on an earlier Tuesday Talks broadcast, so I'm not going to say everything that I said in the past one, but this really, I believe, started or stemmed from the economic collapse, the real estate collapse in 2008. So quick little recap on that. In 2008, 2009, the entire real estate market pretty much collapsed in this country. And most of you remember it. You probably know it as the Great Recession. Now, if you're younger, you might not have, you may have been alive, but probably just not really paying attention, right? But I remember it. And some of you guys, if you guys remember the Great Recession, if you guys were right in the thick of it, if it affected your economic income, I'd love to hear your comments. Let me know in the comments if the Great Recession, the 2008 real estate collapse, did it affect your income? Did you feel it? Because I don't hardly know anyone as far as normal people in America that didn't feel it. In fact, it was kind of the shot that was heard around the world, right? It was a thing that affected so many people around the world. Japan's market kind of took a huge hit. The European Union and all those European countries, a lot of people really hurt from it, okay? And there's a lot of reasons why that thing is also connected. We're really a global economy these days. If you haven't been noticing, there's all this stuff about tariffs and imports and exports and sanctions and all these things actually affects what one nation does nowadays affects other nations. So without getting into all the global economics of it, suffice to say, 2008. We saw a big, huge hit in the economy because of the real estate collapse. Remember that? By the way, guys, I got to get my afternoon coffee in, right? So you don't mind if I'm drinking some afternoon coffee. By the way, OtterBox, this is my mug. I'm drinking my OtterBox. If you guys have OtterBox mugs at your house, I'll just let you know this was given to me personally by one of the co-owners of OtterBox. I met her down at a really cool kind of private quarters event in Park City, Utah last year, about a year ago right now. So down in Utah, met her, super sweet lady. We talked about business, talked about faith. She's a strong Christian, her and her husband. And so anyway, really cool. I got to get this mug from her, but I'm going to be taking sips out of it, so don't mind me when I do. So the economy got hit. Boy, everybody was hurting. Let's see. Sherry says, yeah, I hope you got laid off in the middle of that crash. Yes, that was an impact. Absolutely. Andy says, God moved us out to Oklahoma in 2006. It didn't affect us much in a bad way. You know what? That's because Oklahoma doesn't have much of an economy to begin with. Just teasing, okay? Yeah, there are actually some markets. Oklahoma is one area. Iowa was another area that because of the fact they don't really have these big ups and downs, real estate speaking, they weren't affected as much. Another interesting thing I learned at that time was there are markets that can actually be sustained during those times because of the fact that there is such a good economy in an area. So for instance, Seattle, I was a lowly, poor, broke construction worker in the 2007, 2008 coming into that. Graduated from the Bible school that I was training for ministry at that time in Florida. and then made my way up to Seattle, Washington, where a friend of mine, who his dad was buying up bank-owned lots, and we were building spec homes, and they were selling just as quickly as we could get them done. And so the fact is that I couldn't really understand at that time, like why is the rest of the market in the country collapsing, and yet people are buying these brand new homes. At the time, we were building 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath houses, Bothell, Washington, Kirkland, Washington, Linwood, Washington, and I couldn't figure out how they were selling. And they were selling what was, to me at that time, crazy amounts of money: $475,000, $525,000 for this house, when the rest of the country is just going under. Well, what I found out was there are certain markets that are going to be able to be sustained in downturns because they have a strong economic engine. So Microsoft, of course, Amazon at that time was really beginning to flourish. You're looking at some things that actually make some markets a little different. But let's get back to our subject matter topic at hand today. What happened after all these houses started flooding the market, single family homes, is some really, really smart people, and I do mean smart because, hey, you got to see the opportunity, right? It's really smart people began to see opportunity to buy up these properties that were coming on the market as bank-owned foreclosed properties. And man, they were everywhere. It seems like every other third or fourth house was bank-owned or going in foreclosure. Okay, so when that was happening, the smart fellers at Wall Street and these people that get together and look for opportunity places to put money to invest it, they looked at what was going on and they said, hey, if we buy up as many of these properties as possible into these, and package them together, then we can more or less control these portfolios of single family homes. And yeah, normally we're buying up apartment complexes and multiplexes and commercial properties, but goodness, these properties, we could pick them up for 30 cents, 50 cents on the dollar if we make cash offers. So they were getting these amazing deals on these properties that, statistically speaking, they knew those properties, the values were going to come back on those properties. So it made sense. And so what happened during that time was you started to see a lot of interest from Wall Street in a commodity or in a product that traditionally hadn't been really attractive. I mean, think about it. Would you rather own 10 single family homes that all have different addresses and different locations spread all over the place and try to manage those things, and your handyman has to go here and there? Or would you rather have one roof with 10 units under that roof, a 10-plex? From an investor's point of view, someone that's managing it, it's much easier to manage multiplex properties than it is to manage single individual homes. But now, like I said, with the price that they were able to pick these things up, it was kind of a no-brainer. Ted says, I remember I bought my first condo, primary residence, 2007, in a high market just before everything dropped. Yes, it was underwater for a very long time. He says, when I sold in 2019, the value was back up. So that was about 10, 11 year span. Yep, that sounds about right. But I probably would have about $100,000 more equity if I just bought just after everything dropped. Yeah, but here's the thing, Ted. Don't give yourself too hard a time because I wouldn't say nobody saw it coming. There were people that saw it coming, but the average consumer retail buyer like you and I, we didn't know it was happening. We didn't know what was going on. So Peggy, yep, you're absolutely right. You would rather have a 10-plex, right? Just easier to manage. But as these people, smart guys, smart gals in Wall Street started seeing opportunity, they started buying up these, and then it became kind of popular, right? And so and then they started going, man, we made these huge, significant gains in a relatively short amount of time. And, we've got value and we can borrow against that. We can package this together and sell it off to different investment companies. And so hedge funds began to be built, and private equity funds, such as BlackRock is one of the ones, began to be formed around this idea of buying up single family homes. Okay. Now, this is what I commented in the article, or in the post that I made. And what's interesting to me is that the article that I was reading, which I like to read different stuff, right? So I don't just read, Fox News. I like to read stuff from CNN. I like to read stuff from Vox, VOX, occasionally, because then you can get a really extreme left leaning point of view and perspective. I like to read stuff from the Daily Wire, just different groups and different I guess sides of the equation to really try to get more of a well-rounded view, because I found that most of the time the truth is not usually over on one side or the other. It's typically kind of geared more toward one or the other in the middle with a lot of things. Now, that's not a blanket statement. That's not covering everything, but that's how a lot of this stuff goes. So, public opinion, we know this because of the day and age we're living in. Politically, we're living in a very polarized, very opposite, opposing forces, and very few people actually have time to take, for conversation to hear one another's points of view. So it was interesting to me, or really actually kind of comical, to be honest, when I was reading this article about the executive order that Donald Trump put out, because what's happened is there's been a lot of people that said, hey, we don't want these institutional buyers buying up all the single family residential homes, or maybe not buying it all up, but what they have been doing by purchasing, and by the way, they have billions of dollars to throw around, and this is part of their business model. So typically, if you have a lot of money and you want something, you can typically pay more for it, especially if you plan on holding on to it for a certain amount of time, or you have almost like a guaranteed turnaround that's going to get you money back. They're just shooting for margins, right? And so these big institutional buyers have actually been they've been buying up these properties, single family homes, for a long time. And somebody said, well, they're statistically, they're only purchasing, institutional buyers only have so much of a what do they call it? They only have so much of the actual ownership in the market. Okay, which is true. But the one thing that the article ignored was the fact that when these institutional buyers are paying more for the average single family home than what you or I could buy it as a retail buyer, and because they can afford, they have cash that they have to put into single family homes. So they typically are able to afford to pay more. They're not looking so much for the bargain, although they are, they're investors. But the point is the prices that they were paying actually drove up, is really responsible in part for driving up the cost of residential single family homes in America. Now, it's not the only factor. Okay, I want to be really clear on that. But when you try to pretend like as if it doesn't matter, it's not, it didn't have much of an effect. They only own 4% of, the actual market share. Yeah, but what you're talking about is you drove up those prices, because remember, you go to bid on a house, and the house, gets bought up by an institutional buyer that's just going to turn it into a rental and hold on to it for 10 years because they can, and they have the money, and that's their business model. And they know in 10 years, whatever they pay for it today, even if they paid a little bit more than market price, they know in 10 years it's going to be worth up here, right? So you try to buy that house, they buy it instead. Not only did you miss out on the deal, right, because someone was able to pay more, okay, that's fair market, whatever. But what happened also is the house next door, when it came up for sale, the seller was able to ask more for it, or the prices went up because of the price that was paid on the house that you lost. Peggy says messes up the comps. Exactly. Peggy, you nailed it. That's exactly what it is, through comping a property out of balance in many markets. Exactly. Kevin, 100%. You guys are on track here. So you understand the problem was not just that they were buying and owning them, but it was actually messing up the comps for what would be a normal market price in the area. So everyone's complaining about prices being so high for housing in America, and it's true. But the one of the bigger culprits in this whole equation was this big influx of institutional buyers coming in and buying up single family homes in the marketplace. Okay, so like we recognize that people have said, hey, that's not a good idea. People have said, and this is for investors like ourselves, small time investors, people who are looking at the housing crisis, shortage of housing. By the way, massive shortage of housing in America across the country. because what happened when that big downturn happened in 2008, a lot of builders went out of business. They went bankrupt. They changed careers. They went into different things because there was just no money to be made in that space. And so what happens? All these houses stop being built. And then, time goes on and, the economy begins to correct. Things happen. Money gets put back in the market. People start buying again. But, oh, by the way, we're short on how many houses we should be building in this country by tens of thousands every single year. And so the problem has just exacerbated because of the fact that you have the institutional buyers paying more, messing up the comps. That's raising the price of housing. The demand has come back. That's raising up the price of housing. The supply is still very low. Even right here in the Treasure Valley, for instance, we're about 20,000 house units, they call it, 20,000 units short on the current housing demand. 20,000 short today. And that doesn't speak at all about the influx of people moving into this area. And so it really did have an effect on the market. So you had people, reasonable people that knew what they were looking at, and then just everyday people are like, good night. Zillow paid cash for the house that I was using Zillow to look at. Zillow bought it. I go look up the public record. Who bought the house I was looking at? Well, Zillow did. Remember, Zillow got involved. They were buying houses. They were throwing everything on it. Everything was crazy, okay? So, and by the way, what was Zillow? That was a hedge fund. That was a big institutional fund, private equity that, Zillow put together. They're like, hey, we have access to all this data. We can go out and buy properties if you'll just invest in us. And it failed. Okay, it failed because that's not how you buy real estate. You don't make money in real estate by just overpaying just because you can. Surprise. Okay, now, so Donald Trump, for whatever reason you want to say, okay, and I'm not here to talk politically or favor of or against, but Donald Trump basically responded to a real kind of cry for help, so to speak, from many, many people across the board in the real estate space, saying, hey, we've got to stop Wall Street from coming in here and buying up everything, and we don't have a chance to even make an offer on it because it's just crazy what they're able to pay. So Donald Trump steps in and says, we're going to stop this. He puts out an executive order and actually does it. And then here's what's really interesting. The people that were screaming the loudest about how much we needed to stop this, and granted, I think, kudos to them, it was the liberal left side that was primarily the ones that were making the most noise about needing to stop these hedge funds, needing to stop Wall Street. And it's kind of, there's that whole kind of radical, power to the people type of atmosphere that definitely exists among the left. And so, and some of this stuff is absolutely justifiable. But the point is, they were screaming the loudest that we have to stop Wall Street from buying these properties. Now, Donald Trump comes out and puts an executive order, and up pops these articles from all these different places saying, well, it's not really that big of a deal. And suddenly there's this big backlash and this push and this almost favor of, they're not really actually affecting the market. They only own 4% of actual properties in America. And like I said, completely ignoring some of the other things, the cause and effect that we just talked about. So I find that part to be extremely hypocritical, okay? Not to say that only the left are hypocrites, but this is why I don't land too much on one side or the other. I believe that politically speaking, you've got to find the things that align with your value. And regardless of who it is that's putting it or promoting it or going to make it happen, you got to vote for your conscience. You got to vote toward things that actually matter to you. And obviously, that's going to be a personal, highly subjective thing. So when it gets into voting, hey, you do you, boo. Okay? For real. But here's the thing I do not like. And I think this is absolutely ridiculous. When you have people that just months ago, just a couple of years ago, they were marching and demanding and petitioning and getting these interest groups to go and say, we've got to stop Wall Street from buying up residential homes in America. You're driving up the price of housing. You're making it unaffordable. Minority groups can't own a house. All this stuff. Okay, they were saying that, and for the most part, largely true. And then you have a president that steps in and issues an executive order literally addressing the very problem that has been raised. And now the same people that had the problem are saying, well, hold on a minute. We didn't know it was going to be Trump that was going to fix the problem. I find that absolutely ridiculous and hypocritical. It actually says to me that you don't actually care so much about the issue or your constituents or the people that you're supposedly backing. You just care about making noise and being a pest. That's what I think. But I could be wrong. I don't want to judge people's motives because I don't know. Regardless of that, we'll move on real quickly. Regardless of that, I think it's really interesting because not only because of that, but because there are some things that are going to be happening in the real estate market directly because of this executive order. So in other words, if it actually goes through, and they're talking about in as little as 60 days, stopping across the country Wall Street from being able to buy properties, single family residential homes in America. I think that's great. And by the way, they're like, well, and by the way, you can't go out and create shell companies and just split yourself up into smaller companies, because that is the big question. What exactly constitutes an institutional buyer, right? Is it do you have to have so many staff? Do you have to be worth so much money? What actually constitutes an institutional buyer? That is a big question, and that's going to have to be hashed out and worked out, and we'll see where they land. So I don't even want to comment to that because I don't know yet. I don't think anybody does. But here's what I want to talk about a little bit for the next couple of minutes today. Okay, by the way, is this making sense? You guys give me some comments. I'm going to check my comments while I'm drinking some coffee. Let's see here. Let's see if I can see. Peggy says I lived in Park City. Do you guys, if this is making sense to you, if you're up to speed so far, if that actually helps explain it, let me know in the comments. Let's see here. Oh, Tess and Sherry are saying hi. Peggy's watching from YouTube. Sherry says, hey, John, can see you on Instagram and cannot see your comments over there. Okay. All right. So hopefully this is making sense, right? Ted says makes great sense. Okay, perfect. Thanks, Ted. Thanks for saying that and let me get a chance to drink my coffee. Man, that's a good cup of coffee too, by the way, guys. Boy, you just can't hardly beat a good cup of afternoon black Americano coffee. Whew. Anyway, where was I? Okay, I've got some notes here in front of me. This is what I want to talk about this next little section, okay? I personally think that this is going to provide some opportunities in the real estate space. Listen, for smaller real estate investors like us, okay? So I think, yes, Peggy says heaven, yeah, that's right, heaven, yeah. Carolyn, makes sense. Okay, perfect. Good, you guys are tracking so far. Now, here's what I think. I think that the executive order that Trump has put out in the administration, and we know that it's not just one man, there's a whole team, there's all kinds of different people. People get appointed to look over this stuff. There's different committees, but the whole idea seems to be, in my opinion, and I've read through some of the executive order. You guys can read through it yourself, but the whole idea seems to be really, yes, on the surface, on the face of it, for the public opinion, it's obviously there's a real urgent issue that's a hot topic that gets thrown out there. That's the way it always works. So you guys understand this, right? If it's in the news, if it's actually happening now, if it's a debated, contested issue, it's almost always. I hate to. I'm not gonna. I don't hate to say it. I'm just gonna say it. It's almost always there's some whatever's in the news, whatever's flashing, whatever's getting your headline attention right now, is usually either one, it's an intentional distraction from what's actually going on, or from some other thing that might be going on. Okay. And it's created to cause attention, and there's media sources that kind of give it that attention. It's either that, or it's a legitimate issue that is too large to ignore, or maybe has been touched on. And so, like, we're going to talk about this, but we're going to make sure that our story is angled a certain way. Everybody has an agenda. You guys should know that. Go look up John Swinson. He was the New York Times editor back in the 1920s. And when he retired and, they gave him a toast, they said, here, to the free press in America. And he said, back in the 1920s, he said, there's no such thing as the free press in this country. He said, you guys, you editors, you chiefs of the executives and all this stuff, you all know that we that we are vassals of rich men. He said basically they pipe and we dance. We do what they tell us to do. We write our stories and we know. And he says, and you one of the quotes is he said, we all know, and this is at a private event for his retirement. The editor of the New York Times. He said, we all know that if any one of us dared to give our true, honest opinion or speak the truth about a matter the way it actually is, we would be out on the street in less than 24 hours. He says, we do what we're told. We are the puppets of rich men, and they pull the strings and we dance. Okay, so that was in the 1920s, guys. I don't think things have gotten better. In fact, I think the way that marketing and propaganda has been perfected and dialed in so accurately to where your phone will give you what it thinks you want, right? Like we know that we're living in a day and age where almost everything that's on the news, I don't care if it's Fox, Fox FOX or Fox FAUX, or if it's CNN, it's that's one of the reasons why I love fake news. So much of it is fake news. And by the way, it's if it's on the right wing, highly conspiratorial and all this stuff, a lot of that is fake too. Okay, so you don't. What I'm saying is, you understand that if it's in the news, if it's getting the attention, it's usually just to be able to do something else on the side without bringing so much attention. So I go back to this story and I go, okay, well, where is that actually in this story? So the thing that gets everybody's attention is that, hey, we're going to stop these institutional buyers from buying up, real estate, for stealing homes from American families. Okay, that's the story that gets put out front. What I think, based on if you look at the actual the what's in the bill or the order, is it looks like it's actually more of a restructuring of how what the role of the institutional um, capital is allowed to do. So it's going to be pushing it away from competing with families, yes, but also you can't do that with these billions and trillions of dollars. Like you can't, I don't care who Trump or any of these presidents are, they're not going to be able to go up against Wall Street directly. Those people have a lot of money and there's a lot of corruption and there's a lot of people that end up in the river, floating down the Hudson River or whatever, in the bottom of it with concrete boots if you try to go up against certain things, right? I'm just saying, we all know that kind of stuff happens, right? Not in America. You are highly, highly ignorant, okay, if you think that doesn't happen in this country, okay? And I didn't say that to insult you. I'm just saying you don't know what you're talking about, okay? Read Sammy Gravano, the hitman for the New York mafia back in the 70s and 80s, and the construction and working with the unions. I mean, all in with the unions, the mafia and the unions, the mob just directly joined at the hip. In fact, the mob is the union in a lot of these places. So that stuff goes on. So nobody in their right mind, especially somebody from New York with real estate investments and all that stuff, he's not going to go up against like these institutional buyers are like, you're not going to be buying this anymore. You cannot do that with those types of organizations unless you offer an alternative. Okay. And so sorry guys, I got an itch in my nose. What I think is we're going to see happen, this is just my prediction. We'll see if I'm right or not, but I think what we're going to see happen is this. I think what you're going to see happen is this is going to lead into a much, much broader, it's going to open up the doors, so to speak, for the big institutional capital buyers to become builders, or it's going to roll out the red carpet for them to build single family homes that are built to rent. It's actually kind of an emerging term. It's probably been around for a while, but you're going to see this term probably more and more. It's a BTR, built to rent. So the idea is these institutional buyers, they may not be able to buy the house in your neighborhood, but they can certainly build the neighborhood next to you. You see what I'm saying? These are the institutional organizations that have the money and the capital to develop entire tracts of neighborhoods and subdivisions that are all built as rental neighborhoods. And in fact, we're actually already seeing that in some of these developing markets. We're actually seeing here in the Treasure Valley anywhere, you're seeing entire subdivisions or neighborhoods, or at least portions of those neighborhoods that are all built as rentals. They're single family homes but one big organization owns all of those properties. Have you guys seen this? Let me know in the comments if you guys have seen this or heard about this before. It's called the BTR model, build to rent model. And I'll tell you in just a second why I think it's going to provide opportunity for people like us. Okay. Now, this build to rent model has already been kind of exploding over the last couple of years. You got DR Horton that's been doing this. I got my notes here. In 2022, 14,500 new single family homes were built as rentals. Like from day one, they were built to rent out. That was a 47% jump over the year before that. Now, I don't have the statistics for 2023, 2024, 2025, but I don't think that that has slowed down. There's a demand, but if less and less people can afford to buy a house, but they also have to live somewhere, right? Ted says, I've not heard of build to rent. Yep, it's something you're going to hear a lot more of, Ted. So Carolyn says, yep, I saw one of those developments. Or was it a development or an actual just a single family home? Obviously, the development is of single family homes, but this is happening everywhere, especially in markets where housing or land is still affordable. Okay. Sherry says, actually see this a bit in the Portland market. Yep, it's guys, it's emerging. It's coming from everywhere. It's going to be happening. DR Horton is involved. Lennar Homes is involved. Okay, Carolyn says the actual development. Yeah, not just one single family home. Yep, an entire development. Invitation Homes. These are all these home builders, like big nationwide home builders, are actually, I think we're going to be seeing an emerging of institutional capital that has been used to buying up single family homes, and they're going to be getting into working with the actual builders, the national builders, to build out, instead of building out subdivisions to sell to individual homeowners like you and I or our neighbors. It's going to be actually built to sell to these institutions that have all this capital. That's what I think is going to happen. Okay. Now, what ends up happening from that? Okay. I'm looking at my notes, so forgive me. Okay. First of all, the policy that Trump put in place, this order, it actually accelerates what I was just saying, because it removes the incentives for the institutional buyers to be able to compete. So if you can't get government financing, if you can't get subsidies, then a lot of these institutions, they just move to where the money is easier to park. Okay. So that's a whole different thing, but you understand, with big money, there's usually incentives to go do what they're doing. So all that is being taken away from this executive order. So now you're going to have all this money is going to be sitting there going, well, if we don't have the incentive, and if we actually have restrictions on what we can do in that area, then where can we go? Let's go to what has been working over here. Let's go start buying up all of these build to rent. Let's just partner with these builders nationwide, DR Horton, Lennar. Let's get together with them and let's build out and try our subdivisions of properties. Okay. Andy says, seen several subdivisions. Yes. Okay. Build to rent. Exactly. Okay. Now let's move on to the next thing. So in theory, if Wall Street gets pushed out of buying these properties, okay, if Wall Street gets pushed out of buying these properties in certain zip codes or across the country even, then the supply is going to open up to retail buyers, right? That's the theory. Okay, now everyday people can buy property. But here's what also happens. The rental supply might tighten up because of the fact that they're going to be shifting to moving into rental areas. So you take, for instance, Atlanta. Okay, I have some statistics here in my notes. Atlanta is one of the most heavily dominated markets by institutional buyers. Institutional buyers loved Atlanta. Okay, as of 2023, companies like Progress Residential owned thousands of homes there, literally thousands of homes in the Atlanta market. Okay. Now, if these firms that are used to buying this as their business model, if they're suddenly put on the sideline and they're not building their new stock of inventory and housing fast enough, then the rents in those neighborhoods could actually end up going up because of the constrained inventory. Think about it. What's happening to every one of these houses that these institutional buyers are buying? They're turning them into what? Drop it in the comments. What if you're an institutional buyer, you're a Wall Street company, and you're buying up these properties? What are you doing with these properties? How do you make money on these properties? Somebody drop it in the comments. You guys know what the answer is. Okay. If you're buying up these properties and you're an institutional buyer and you're buying them up, what are they doing? They're buying them to turn them into rentals. And so those prices are kind of controlled based on the inventory. They go, well, we have so many houses, and we know we can get, if we lower the price or keep the price right here, then we can get so much, and we, based on our volume that we have, we know we can produce X amount. Well, suddenly we're not able to buy up these properties around. Then the idea is that it's really, really possible that rent could go up because there's a lack of new rental properties coming on the market. So I think that's where this eventual wave of build to rent homes and these subdivisions is actually going to balance this out long term. But in the short term, I think you're going to see rents probably go up a little bit in certain markets, maybe a lot of it. And that's going to remain to be seen. Okay. Now, where is the opportunity for us? Right? We're not Wall Street. We're not BlackRock. We're not, a lot of these things. Where's the opportunity for us? Well, first of all, I think the opportunity is going to come out in a couple different ways. One, okay, think about this. If you suddenly stop seeing these institutional hedge funds and these fund groups, private equity firms buying up these properties, then that's going to mean less buyers on the market, right? Less money in that area. Retail buyers are still not quite out there in droves buying up properties. So what that means for us is we now possibly can become the solution for those people that are needing to sell, and they need to sell in a hurry. Like, we don't have as much competition as small time investors, flippers, wholesalers, buy and hold landlord investors. You may not have nearly as much in competition in the spaces that you've been working in for the last couple of years, because these big institutional buyers, their money is going to go out of the market. Okay. So for instance, in Phoenix, everybody knows Phoenix is a popular spot for investment properties. In Phoenix, they saw a surge from 2020 to 2022 in these institutional buyers coming in and just buying up everything, right? What does that do? That drives prices up significantly. Okay. Now, if those buyers are suddenly exiting that market as far as buying up existing single family homes, hey, guess what? You now removed a big chunk of your buying presence, and that means that prices will possibly fall a little bit. I don't know if they're going to really tank like they did before, but I think what's going to happen is I think we're going to see prices are going to soften a little bit more even. And that means two things. That means, number one, you might have a great opportunity to buy. Number two, it means be careful when you're buying, that you're not buying, like Ted said, in 2007 when 2008 is right around the corner. Make sure that your offers are significantly lowered on the properties that you're trying to buy, because you just don't know. You might be buying, and then especially if you're flipping, you're looking to flip this thing in 6 months. Good night, nurse. If you don't have the thing dialed in way down below what market value is going to be, then you could end up sitting on a property that you never intended to keep. Okay, so that's one. Prices are probably going to come down a little bit in certain markets. We're going to see a little bit of softening because those big institutional buyers are going to pull their money out as far as being a buyer of existing homes. Opportunity for you, but it's only an opportunity if you buy right. Does that make sense? You've got to buy right. Somebody drop it in the comments, say it to me so I know you're hearing me. Buy right. You have to buy at the right price. Okay. Okay. So what else does this do? This provides opportunity for us in another area. Okay. Let me look at the comments real quick. Make sure you guys are still with me. Yeah, it messed up. Purchase the asset, stabilize the asset, maximize the asset, of course. Yeah, Andy says they're going to create shell companies, avoid restrictions, and use incentives. I don't think so, Andy. And the reason I don't think so is because I believe that the executive order actually specifically addresses that. It talks about shell companies, and the big question is, how small of a company do you have to be before you're no longer qualified as an institutional buyer? At some point, the numbers just don't make sense. Like, how, you take BlackRock, for instance, are they going to split into 10,000 smaller companies just so they can keep doing what they're doing? Probably not. They're just going to shift and move into the area that's going to be easier, which is why I think we're going to see these build to rent subdivisions and entire neighborhoods developments. I think they're going to make a huge impact in the market before too long. Okay, buy right, buy right. You make your money when you buy. That's right. When you nigh or when you buy, whichever one. Peggy, that's right. Buy when you buy. Okay, should buy right. Okay. Now, when I talk about opportunity, I'm talking about opportunity for people like us, right? We're small, mom and pop. None of us are running these big multi-million-dollar companies. Maybe you are. Maybe I just don't know about it. But none of us, as far as I know, are doing that. Maybe one day we will, right? But right now, we got to look at what can we do. So, number one, be prepared to be able to make competitive offers on the properties that you might be. If you have a buy box, I think you're going to see about 2 months from now. I think you're going to see a bunch of properties that normally would have been picked up by some of these other companies. I think we're going to see a bunch of those properties be good opportunities for you, but it's only a good opportunity if you buy at the right price. Okay. Secondly, okay, and this is how do I put this? If I think we're going to see a bunch of these rental communities, these build to rent communities pop up, right? And I think it could be really fast because suddenly that money isn't able to go toward what it was going. It's like we got to figure out where this money has to go. One of the things about money is money has a need to move. Okay, money has to go to places, and so for small investors like us, it could be a really big shift in our favor. So buyers, and by the way, it's kind of, even though it moves fast, like it's not nearly as fast as you and I can move. Okay. So if these big buyers are forced to start focusing on building new construction homes, then this is where you and we can start picking up those discounted deals where the institutional buyers once dominated. Okay. I think it's going to be more competitive in the actual traditional home buying. I think we're going to have a little more leverage as buyers. We're already seeing that in some regards because the retail buyers are kind of not too excited about the price, the cost of buying a property today based on interest rates, right? And so I think flips are going to be really good. I think creative deal strategies are going to be really good. And I think it's also a good time. Now, this is not my particular model. I'm not fond of this, but I think rent by the room, midterm renters that were smaller operators tend to thrive. I think these are going to be good areas for us to be in. So if you're a homeowner, obviously you need to be careful because if you're in an area where you're used to, putting the property out there and you have all this equity based on what buyers will pay for it, if you're counting on that, you might want to be careful because you might want to sell now because I don't know that equity is going to remain intact if the prices start softening a little bit because the institutional buyers are out of the game. Okay. Also, if these institutional buyers are building these rental type of properties and there's a certain valuation, that might actually bring your property value down a little bit too. I just think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in the next 4 to 6 months. Okay. So, that's my takeaway on it. Love to hear what you guys think about it. Okay, if you are whether you agree with Trump or not, whether you agree with his executive order or not, if you're a small investor, I don't care which side of the political aisle you're on. If you're a small time investor, I really think that you need to be paying really close attention to this because this is a really big deal. Okay, it's a really big deal. So we're looking at new inventory patterns. Okay, I got my notes here. We're looking at new inventory patterns. We're looking at a shift in rental dynamics. Think about it. Okay, if suddenly existing single family homes aren't being turned into rentals, well then that could potentially drive the price of rent up because less inventory, at least in an interim. Okay, I think it's going to create a little more of a level playing field. That's what I really like about it. I think it's going to create a little more level playing field for those of us who are in acquisitions. One of the things that I noticed, I saw it firsthand when I first got into real estate intentionally in 2015. I saw it change in front of my eyes from 2015 to 2019, 2020. What you could pay for a property, what the traditional cash offer, 70% of ARV minus repairs, that kind of went out the window, right? You had certain markets where if you weren't offering 80, 85% ARV, you were not giving, the sellers were laughing at you. Like, why would I want to take this? I've got multiple offers above asking price, and Zillow wants to buy my house too, and they're willing to pay $20,000 more. That happened in real time. That's actually one of the main reasons why I started looking for alternatives, and that's how I got into creative financing, sub two. That's how I Pace Morby. You guys know my story there. So I learned how to buy properties in a little different way using creative financing, so I didn't have to go out and try to compete with these buyers. Well, if all these people go away, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it looks like it's moving that direction. If it all goes away, then it's going to really shift the dynamic of what basically it's going to level the playing field. I think it's really, I think it has a potential to really change some things. Okay. And then it's obviously always kind of interesting to pay attention to where big money goes. Okay. Now I'm not talking about becoming an expert in stocks and indexes and, bonds and all that stuff. Some of you might be into that. I'm not. But if you see big money begin to shift in a certain direction, there's always going to be there's usually going to be a pretty good lesson to be learned or value to be gained, education to be acquired by observing where they're going. Where is the big money going, and what crumbs might fall off of that table, so to speak, that people like us could pick up on. Big money right now is going into building out infrastructure for data centers and for energy and stuff related to tech, right? We all know that. Okay, well, I don't have a dog in that fight, so to speak. Like, I don't have any really thing to say when it comes to, like, I can't compete with Hitachi, who's buying up, you know, 50 acres so they can build a chip manufacturing plant in certain areas. I'm not going to compete with that buyer. But what I can do is I can say, hey, if they're buying in that area, I'm going to start looking at the surrounding communities and see what can I purchase at a discounted rate that I know is going to come up in value once they get their infrastructure put in place. Why? Because they got workforce housing. You got people that stay on long term after the thing is built, supportive roles, all that stuff. Those people have to live somewhere. Could be a really good opportunity for flipping or for picking up rentals. So that's what I wanted to bring to you guys today. I want to say it for the record. I personally think that if this executive order bans and really actually stops Wall Street from buying up single family homes, I think that's a good thing. Okay. I don't care who would be put. It could be Sleepy Joe, right? It could be whoever. It doesn't matter who it is. If it actually accomplishes something and makes it easier for me, for my kids to be able to afford a home in America, I'm all for it. Okay. Now, having said that, I don't know how this is all going to work out yet because there's so many things we don't know. What is an institutional buyer, right? What actually are their limitations going to be? But really, the bigger question is where, if that actually goes through, where is that institutional money going to shift? I believe it's going to shift toward the build to rent model. I think we've already seen indicators of that happening with institutional capital partnering with DR Horton, partnering with these national builders, and they're building out entire development subdivisions. It's a fairly new concept, okay? And there's a lot of money that's going to have to go somewhere. So what would need to change in the way you do business? What kind of deals would you look for, or what kind of deals might you avoid if you knew that 6 months, a year, 18 months from now, that the build to rent model with these big, huge institutional buyers was going to start catching on and start really trending, and they have big money, they can push stuff through with counties and cities and get things passed a lot quicker than you can as an individual. Just remember, there's going to be some changes coming up. So love to hear you guys' thoughts. If you got value out of this, let me know. Drop it in the comments. Appreciate you guys being here today. We're coming up on the top of the hour. I'm going to jump off here. I wanted to say this real quickly. If you are in the Treasure Valley, the TV REI group meetup, we have maybe 2 seats left. So if you guys are interested in coming out to the TV REI group meetup, that's TV like Treasure Valley REI Real Estate Investor Group.com/meetup. Go to the website, RSVP, TVREIGroup.com/meetup. Love to see you out there, but those seats are going to go really quickly. I'm looking forward to that's February 5th. And then everybody else in the Portland market, I already put it out there on one post, but I'm going to say it again publicly. if you guys are used to going to the third Thursday PDX REI group meetup, just know this: we're going to combine the PDX REI group meetup with Pace Morby Creative Nation Tour. It's going to be in Portland on the day before. It's going to be the third Wednesday. So normally we'd be doing our meetup, I believe it's on the 18th or 19th. We're going to be doing we're going to be combining forces, merging with the Creative Nation Tour. Pace Morby going to be in town. Jamil Damji is going to be in town. I don't know if Jerry Norton's coming, but either way, you got Pace, you got Jamil going to be doing deals live in Portland, and it's the day before, so we're just going to cancel the third Thursday. We're going to bring it into the Wednesday, and you go on to the pdxreigroup.com. I'm sorry, PDX REI Group Facebook, and you can find the details in there. So appreciate you guys. Peggy says, very valuable. Awesome. Thank you, Peggy. Glad you enjoyed that. Ted Seller, complex dynamic case. Great discussion. Perfect. Guys, appreciate you. Sherry, let's see. While this all may prove beneficial, it would have been nice to see Congress and other entities on board. Agreed. I agreed. I think there are some executive order privileges that every president has. So that's kind of, I guess there's got to be some perks to being in the office, right? And I appreciate your input. You guys, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for showing up. If you guys got value out of this, maybe post the link after it goes live. Go ahead and post the link on your timeline or share it in a group you're in if you think it's worth sharing. If it's not, it's totally fine. But I love getting the word out about this. We'll appreciate you guys. All right, guys, take care. Have a great rest of your week. We'll talk to you soon. God bless.